point can you say, I do want to help the poor, but I don't want to fund war? You have no freedom of economic choice, right? You still have to give government your money. You still have to give up your property. You still have to pay your taxes. Because if you did have a freedom of economic choice on how best to spend your own money, how best to allocate your own resources, government wouldn't threaten to send you to another cage if you didn't pay your taxes, right?
So how do you feel about people whose rebuttal is, well, if you just limit the role of government, then people would have more liberties and more rights and freedom to do whatever they choose?
Okay, yeah. So like we're talking about like limited government. The arguments that we have for all the other areas we want government to get out of the market are the same arguments you can apply to the areas of security, arbitration, roads. These are things that the market is also very good at doing as well. It's not just because we attach like the word government, magic, right? Yeah. Only they can do it, right? And security would be only the ones that they enforce the laws that they have in a contractual obligation, right? They won't be like when the laws here, for example, I don't have an explicit connection with that or a contract with that, right? I never said that it's not okay to smoke cannabis, right? Right?
Who would say such a thing?
It's
ridiculous, yeah.
But under limited government, it's one preference of an idea or opinion forced into everyone in a demographic region, right? So that's why I think it's these particular. We can have rules, we can have laws, we can have security, but one that has real respect for property rights, right? One in which the consumer can select which one can best provide them those choices to fulfill their needs, not one overarching one that encompasses and forces everyone to adhere to. But even still, like when we talk about limited government and we talk about like arbitration you can find everywhere. Like PayPal arbitration, eBay arbitration. Yes. It's like someone misuses your credit card. It's like, okay, we'll give you $100. We'll investigate it for you, right? Yeah. You hit somebody's car, the insurance company, they'll solve that arbitration, right? So arbitration then is not like something unique that only government people, just because they wear a black robe, only they can do it, right? It's just resolving conflicts. And I think the market has done time and time again many other ways to resolve that in a lot of different areas. So yeah, I guess when people talk about limited government, that's what it is to remind them is that the United States started as a limited government in 1776. Look where we are today. Yeah. One exception to politics, to allowing that kind of political violence, leads for people like growing and expanding it more and more, like executive power, right? Obama increased it to where now Trump can enjoy all that, and now Trump, of course, is going to increase it, and to the next person that gets into office is going to enjoy it and continue to.
And even if he uses less executive orders relative to Obama, he still used so much more than the presidents that preceded him recently. Unless you want to go back to like FDR, but
right.
So now he has his precedent. He's like, oh well, I still use less than Obama, even though I used 100 executive orders or something like that nature.
Right. You have Obama that finally assassinated like 2 Americans, right, without due process of law, right? That's an increase of executive powers. You have Trump like doing bombing, but without like declaration of war of Congress, and that's stuff people have been sliding through for decades.
It's like kind of like an umbrella war, but it's not direct. Because we haven't actually initiated war in like over 100 years.
Right. Technically, yeah, they'll say technically, right?
It's a war on terror. It's just not because by saying war on terror, you can attack Syria, you can attack Libya, or anywhere in the Middle East that you want to. But by saying we're going to declare war against Libya or Syria alone, then it kind of encapsulates the issue. So it just allows for them to use their influence over a variety of countries.
They do say. Here they put a war on us, war on drugs. Really, it's a war on people, right?
War on minorities,
War on minorities, right? War on poverty. We're just going to declare war on everything. Here's where they declare war, and I would say, here's where we're losing our freedoms, not overseas. Here's where our liberties continue to be curtailed further and further until they're, done away with, right? So I think it's very important then to come out and meet people like that and talk about this stuff. Like another area where they control our liberties would be our currency. Right, and fiat currency, losing like 95, 97% of its value.
Yeah, that's exactly what got me into Bitcoin, because I like the money circulation principle behind it, and I don't like not having full control of my funds. Because if I have $1,000 in the bank account and something happens and my money gets frozen or anything happens with the bank, I technically have no ownership of my money because it's all inside of a bank account. Whereas with Bitcoin or any kind of cryptocurrency, I have full ownership of the private key. So even if the government knew that it belonged to me, I am not obligated to necessarily give them my private key. Or you could just claim ignorance and that you don't know the private key because it's just a random string of numbers and letters. You're like, you say that's mine, but it doesn't say my name. You don't really know. It just has $1 million sitting there. They can just only look at it. And I like that fact about cryptocurrency and about ownership.
Oh, I love it. Yeah. The feasibility of it, right? There's like a guy in Japan whose wife was shopping in Europe, and they accepted Bitcoin at the grocery store. So took a picture of the QR code, sent it to him, and he just paid it right off on the phone. Like that. Yeah. It's just easy, especially for businesses. There's no transaction waiting period. It's instant. And there's that bar. We got to go sometime now. Yeah, Crossing. Get yourself a beer flight. You scan the QR code with your blockchain app or whatever, and just instant, ready to go. For me, I love it. I think it's the future of money. I think it's the future of currency. Something that money has never done in all of history to continue to appreciate and value.
Exactly.
Right.
Well, logically, as long as people assign value to the blockchain, then it'll have inherent value. Yeah.
Right. And then we'll see, like, maybe what's the silver standard? Maybe it might be a Litecoin.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
Maybe it's Ethereum.
But I think that's the benefit of Litecoin, because from the beginning they marketed themselves as inferior, so to speak, to Bitcoin by being silver to Bitcoin's gold.
Yeah.
Where you have like these other cryptocurrencies that just say they're better than everybody. They're more fungible. They're whatever the case may be. But yeah, so I think Litecoin has that advantage because they marketed themselves as secondary or even tertiary to Bitcoin, that people will always see it in that regard and don't expect it to go to $1,000 or something like they would for Bitcoin.
Right, yeah. And Litecoin has gone up.
Yeah, Litecoin has definitely gone up recently.
It's like $12 now. I was looking at a little bit as like a stable currency where I could put like digital currency onto, because it hasn't been moving much, right? It's like sticking around 3 or 4. I was like, all right, this seems like a good stable place. It's not going to drop any more or lower than that. Like it's already bottomed out. But like 2 weeks before I thought about just putting all in there, as it started shooting up. So.
You got to be careful. Fear of missing out, though. A lot of people get burned.
Well, that's pretty cool. I guess your interest of like fiat currency and all that stuff led you to Bitcoin. Where did you learn about the fiat currency yourself? Where did that knowledge come in?
Well, I mean, I've always been interested in business and economics. So I think I was watching a documentary and someone had mentioned the seizure of Silk Road, and I had never heard of it. And it was based off this currency called Bitcoin. I'm like, okay, this seems pretty cool. It's not controlled by a central government. Yeah. So I decided to look into it. Then I realized, like, if I just put $100 in this, there's a good chance that it'll go up. Yeah. And I put $100 in. 2 months later, it was worth $300. And I'm like, all right, I'm definitely checking this thing out. So I started reading more and more about it. And then I got into the altcoin space. And then now I'm just an investor in like ICOs and a day trader.
Nice.
So it came back full circle, but I like the luxury of not being forced to go to a job and clock in. I can just trade from home, and I can also do something that I love by being in the blockchain space. So.
Well, that's beautiful. That's great. You found a way to adopt that back into your life. Nice. But yeah, so the group I'm with is Libertarian. We also have a student group, Students for Liberty, and we're all about Bitcoin here. We're all about the free market, finding ways to kind of liberate ourselves from government control. That's one thing I love Bitcoin, is that there's no Bitcoin bank, right? Yeah, it's decentralized. You can't go out there and hunt it down. There's an incident at an airport once where this guy had like Bitcoin buttons in his luggage. And the TSA is like, okay, we know you got Bitcoin, so it's your Bitcoin, right? It's like, so you what?
It's just, you never know.
It's online. You can print it out. That's another thing. But yeah, no, that's pretty cool. I'm Kal, by the way.
I'm Caleb. Nice to meet you.
Let me give you some. Caleb? All right, Caleb. Cool, nice. Let me give you some cool stuff here. Yeah. Thanks for the conversation. That's great. That's awesome.